I'm a virgin! The words tumbled out of Kemi Adeyemi's mouth in a desperate rush as Park Joon-ho's hand stilled on the zipper of her wedding dress. His fingers, which moments ago had been trailing fire down her spine, froze completely. The temperature in the luxurious penthouse bedroom dropped 10 degrees. Jun-ho stepped back as if she'd burned him, his dark eyes widening with something that looked disturbingly like horror. His jaw clenched, a muscle ticking beneath the sharp line of his cheekbone. "What did you just say?" Kemi's heart hammered against her ribs, still pressed against the floor-to-ceiling window where he'd backed her just seconds ago, the white silk of her wedding dress hugging her beautiful curves. She'd seen the raw desire in his eyes during the ceremony, felt the barely restrained hunger in every touch, and now he was looking at her like she'd committed some unforgivable sin. "I said I'm a virgin," she repeated, her voice smaller now, humiliation burning through her chest. "I've never been with anyone. I didn't have time. I was always studying or working and—" "Stop!" Joon-ho's voice cut through her rambling explanation like a blade. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled black hair, disrupting it for the first time that evening. "Why didn't you say something?" "When?" Kemi's voice rose, anger replacing embarrassment. "When you were tricking me into signing that contract? When you were telling me I'm your property? When you said you'd have me whenever and however you wanted?" Joon-ho's expression darkened at the reminder of his own words. Just 20 minutes ago, he'd backed her into this very room, his hands all over her body, his voice a low growl of possession. "You're mine now, Kemi, in every way, and I'll have you whenever I want, however I want. That's what you agreed to." His hands had roamed over her breasts with unmistakable ownership, and she'd trembled, not entirely from fear, but now he was backing away from her like she carried a disease. He paused, his controlled facade cracking. "I don't do virgins." Kemi blinked, confusion and hurt warring in her chest. "What?" "It's not." He shook his head sharply. "I'm not that man. I don't take innocence." Before she could process that statement, before she could ask what the hell that meant coming from a man who'd literally trapped her into marriage, Joon-ho turned and walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft click that somehow felt louder than a slam. Kemi stood there in her wedding dress, alone in a stranger's bedroom, silhouetted against the Seoul skyline. Tears pricked her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Instead, she sank onto the edge of the massive bed and let her mind drift back to where this nightmare had truly begun. Welcome, Nesties. If you're already hooked by this dark Afro-Korean romance, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see where this goes. Drop a like if you're Team Kemi. And comment below, would you have signed that contract? 3 weeks earlier, Kemi had been living a completely different life. The library at Westbridge University was Kemi's second home. At 11 p.m. on a Thursday night, she sat hunched over her financial analysis textbook. Her natural hair was pulled into a messy bun, her lips moving silently as she worked through derivative calculations. She'd been there since 6, having come straight from her shift at the cafe where she worked part-time. Her phone buzzed, then again. Then it started ringing. Kemi grabbed it, ready to silence it, when she saw her mother's name flashing on the screen. Her stomach dropped. Her mother never called this late. "Mama." "Kemi." Her mother's voice was thin with fear, speaking Yoruba in rapid bursts. "Men came to the apartment. They're looking for you. They said your father owes them money, 500 million naira. They said if we don't pay, they'll—" The line crackled. "They know about your brothers in Lagos. They said—" "Mama, slow down. What men? What money?" "The Park Syndicate." Her mother's voice dropped to a whisper, as if saying the name too loudly would summon them. "Your father borrowed for my treatment. He said he could repay it, but Kemi, they want it all now. They said if you don't come to negotiate, they'll go to Lagos. They'll hurt your brothers." Kemi's blood turned to ice. The Park Syndicate. Everyone in Seoul knew that name, whispered it with the same reverence and terror. They weren't just criminals. They were an empire, untouchable, ruthless. Where are they now? They left. But they said you have 24 hours to come to their headquarters. Kemi, don't. Don't go to those people. I have to, Mama. I can't let them hurt Papa or the boys. Kemi's mind was already racing, calculating. She had maybe $3,000 in savings. Nowhere near enough. But she could negotiate, couldn't she? Set up a payment plan? She was a finance student, for God's sake. Numbers were her language. Kemi, I'll handle it, Mama, I promise. She hung up before her mother could argue, before her own fear could paralyze her. Her hands were shaking as she packed up her books, hurrying out of the library. She didn't notice the looks from the few remaining students. Her mind was already 3 steps ahead, planning what she'd say, how she'd negotiate. She had no idea she was walking straight into a trap that had been set specifically for her. The Park Syndicate headquarters didn't look like a den of criminals. It looked like a Fortune 500 company, all gleaming glass and steel, modern architecture reaching toward the sky. Kemi stood outside the next morning, her heart pounding, wearing her best interview suit. It was the most professional thing she owned. The receptionist barely looked up when Kemi approached. "I'm here about the Adeyemi account," Kemi said, proud that her voice didn't shake. "I'd like to speak with someone about negotiating terms." The receptionist's perfectly made-up face split into a smirk. "Mr. Park doesn't negotiate, but I'll see if he's interested." Kemi waited, perched on the edge of a leather chair that probably cost more than her entire semester's tuition. 15 minutes passed, then 30. Just when she was about to leave, a man in an expensive suit appeared. "Miss Adeyemi, Mr. Park will see you now." Her heels clicked on marble floors as she followed him to an elevator, then up, up, up. The doors opened directly into a penthouse office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking all of Seoul, and behind a massive desk sat a man who made Kemi's breath catch despite her fear. Park Joon-ho was beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful, all sharp angles and cold edges. His black hair was styled perfectly, his suit custom-tailored to his lean, powerful frame. But it was his eyes that made Kemi's pulse skip, dark, intelligent, and utterly devoid of warmth as they swept over her in one assessing glance. He didn't stand, didn't offer a greeting, just gestured to the chair across from his desk with one elegant hand. "You have 2 minutes, speak." Kemi forced herself to sit to meet those cold eyes. "My father's debt. I want to set up a structured repayment plan. I can work, You're the daughter." Joon-ho's voice was smooth, cultured, and sharp enough to cut. "The student." "Yes, and I'm asking for reasonable terms. Your father agreed to repayment in 6 months. It's been 6 months. I don't do extensions." "Then what do you do?" The words came out more challenging than she'd intended, but Kemi was tired, scared, and angry at this cold, beautiful man who held her family's fate in his hands. Something flickered in Joon-ho's eyes, surprise maybe, or interest. He leaned back in his chair, studying her with new attention. "I collect, one way or another." Kemi's stomach churned. "Please, there has to be some way." Joon-ho opened a drawer, pulled out papers, and slid them across the polished desk. "Sign this. Your debt will be cleared immediately." Kemi's hands trembled as she reached for the papers. "What is it?" "An extension agreement. 3 years. You work for my organization, your family is protected, debt forgiven." It seemed too good to be true. Kemi's finance training should have made her suspicious, should have made her read every line carefully. But the thought of her brothers in Lagos, of her sick mother, of her desperate father, it clouded her judgment. She scanned the first page, saw terms about 3 years, about employment, about family protection. She didn't see the header written in Korean, Honin Gyeyagseo, marriage contract. "And my family will be safe? The debt completely cleared?" "The moment you sign." Kemi picked up the pen. Her hand hovered over the signature line for just a moment. Then she thought of her mother's frightened voice, her brothers' faces, and she signed her name in quick, decisive strokes. Joon-ho took the papers back, his expression unreadable. "Excellent. Someone will be in touch with further instructions." "When do I start working? What will I be doing?" You'll find out soon enough. He turned his attention to his computer, dismissing her. You can go. Kemi stood, confusion warring with relief. She'd done it. Her family was safe. Whatever job they had for her, she could handle it for 3 years. She could do anything for 3 years. She had no idea that she'd just signed away far more than 3 years of employment. 2 days of blessed silence followed. Kemi went to class, studied, worked her cafe shifts. She'd almost convinced herself that maybe, just maybe, she'd managed to negotiate her way out of disaster. Maybe the park syndicate would just have her doing administrative work or something equally mundane. Then the delivery arrived. Kemi's roommate, Ada, squealed when the enormous boxes were brought into their tiny shared apartment. "Oh my God, Kemi, did you order something? Is this from a boyfriend?" Kemi stared at the sleek black boxes tied with silver ribbon. Her name was written on the card in elegant script. With trembling fingers, she opened the first one. A wedding dress. Pure white silk that probably cost more than a year of her tuition. The second box held diamond jewelry that caught the afternoon light and threw rainbows across their worn furniture. The third contained designer shoes. Kemi, what the hell? Ada breathed, touching the fabric reverently. Who? The card fell from Kemi's numb fingers. Ada snatched it up and read aloud. The ceremony is Saturday, 2 p.m. Don't be late, Park Jun-ho. Park Jun-ho? As in the Park Syndicate Park Jun-ho? Ada's voice rose to a shriek. Kemi, what did you do? I signed... Kemi's mind was racing back to that contract, to the pages she'd barely glanced at. Oh God, no! She ran to her laptop, pulling up a translation app with shaking hands. It took her 15 minutes of frantic searching before she found a photo of a Korean marriage contract template online. The header matched exactly what had been on the papers she'd signed. Marriage contract. No! Kemi grabbed her phone, dialing the number on the Park Syndicate card she'd been given. It rang once before a cold, professional voice answered. Park Syndicate. I need to speak to Park Jun-ho now. Mr. Park is in a meeting. I don't care if he's meeting with God himself. Put him on the phone. A pause. Then that smooth, cultured voice that now made her blood boil. Miss Adeyemi, to what do I owe the pleasure? You tricked me! Kemi was shouting now, not caring that Ada was watching with wide eyes. That wasn't an employment contract, it was a marriage contract. You signed it. His tone was infuriatingly calm, legally binding. I'll go to the police. With what proof? You signed willingly, eagerly even. 3 witnesses observed the signing, and if you cause problems, the debt doubles. Your family will suffer the consequences. Your choice, Miss Adeyemi. The line went dead. Kemi stood there, the phone clutched in her white-knuckled grip, and felt the trap close completely around her. She'd been played, used, manipulated by a man who'd sat across from her with those cold eyes and let her walk straight into a snare. Kemi? Ada touched her shoulder gently. What are you going to do? What could she do? If she refused, her family would pay the price. Her brothers in Lagos, her sick mother, her desperate father. They'd all suffer because she'd been too stupid, too naive, too desperate to read the damn contract properly. I'm getting married on Saturday, Kemi whispered, and the words tasted like ash in her mouth. The wedding was a cold, transactional affair that mocked everything Kemi had ever dreamed a wedding should be. The venue was stunning, a private estate overlooking the Han River, decorated with thousands of white roses. But the beauty felt like a beautiful cage. Jun-ho's family was there. His father, Park Tae-won, watched the proceedings with calculating eyes that made Kemi's skin crawl. A handful of business associates in expensive suits, no one from Kemi's side. She'd forbidden her mother from coming, unable to bear the thought of her seeing this farce. Kemi walked down the aisle alone, the white dress weighing her down like chains. Jun-ho waited at the altar in a black tuxedo that probably cost more than her family's annual income. He was devastatingly handsome and utterly terrifying in his cold perfection. When she reached him, his eyes swept over her once, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. Was that attraction? Disgust? She couldn't tell, and the not knowing made her hands shake. The officiant droned through the ceremony in Korean. Kemi understood maybe half of it. When it came time for the vows, Junho's assistant appeared with another paper. "The prenuptial agreement," Junho said quietly, handing her a pen. "Sign it." "Are you serious?" Kemi hissed. "At the altar?" "Sign it, or this ends now, and you know what happens then." Her family's faces flashed through her mind. With tears of rage burning behind her eyes, Kemi signed her name for the second time, sealing her fate. The officiant pronounced them married. Junho lifted her veil with mechanical precision, his face an expressionless mask. Then he leaned in for the kiss. It was supposed to be perfunctory, a brush of lips for appearance's sake. But the moment Junho's mouth touched hers, something electric shot through Kemi's body. His hand came up to cup her jaw, tilting her head, and the kiss deepened just slightly, enough for her to taste the danger on his lips, to feel the barely leashed control in the way he held her. When he pulled back, his eyes were darker, heated. For just a second, the mask cracked, and Kemi saw raw hunger there. Then it was gone, replaced by that cold indifference. "My wife," he said, loud enough for their audience to hear. The words sounded like a claim, a brand. The reception was brief. Kemi smiled until her face hurt, accepted congratulations from people whose names she didn't catch, and tried not to flinch every time Junho's hand touched her back or her waist in a possessive gesture for the cameras. Finally, mercifully, it was over. Junho led her to a waiting car, a sleek black sedan with tinted windows. They sat in silence as the driver navigated Seoul's evening traffic. Kemi stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past, and tried not to think about what came next. The penthouse was even more impressive at night. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased all of Seoul spread out like scattered diamonds. The interior was modern, expensive, sterile. It looked like a showroom, not a home. "Your room is in the East Wing," Junho said, his voice carefully neutral as he loosened his tie. "Stay out of my private office. Don't leave without security. Don't contact anyone about our arrangement." "So, I'm a prisoner?" It wasn't a question. Junho turned to face her fully, for the first time since they'd left the reception. His eyes traveled over her slowly, and Kemi felt suddenly, acutely aware of how the dress clung to her body. "You're my wife. There's a difference." "You forced me into this." The words exploded out of her. "You tricked me, trapped me." Junho crossed the distance between them in 3 strides, backing her up against the window. He didn't touch her, but his presence was overwhelming. His body radiating heat and barely contained power. "Your father borrowed from me," he said, his voice dangerously soft. "Someone had to pay. Would you prefer I took it out of his skin? Your brother's, perhaps?" "You're a monster," Kemi whispered, fighting tears. Something flickered in Junho's eyes, pain maybe, or regret, but it was gone so fast she might have imagined it. "Yes," he agreed quietly. "Remember that." He stepped back, creating distance between them, but his eyes kept returning to her like he couldn't help himself. The air between them crackled with tension, fear and anger and something else Kemi didn't want to name. "It's late," Junho said finally. "Get some rest." He turned to leave, and Kemi should have let him go, should have been grateful for the reprieve. But something made her call out. "What happens now?" Junho paused at the doorway, his back to her. "Now you learn to be Mrs. Park, and He trailed off, his shoulders tense. "I suggest you lock your door tonight." Then he was gone, leaving Kemi alone in a gilded cage with a diamond ring on her finger and fear coiling in her stomach. But there was something else, too. Something shameful that she didn't want to acknowledge. When he'd stood close to her, when his eyes had darkened with hunger, her body had responded in ways that terrified her more than his threats ever could. She touched her lips, still tingling from that altar kiss, and wondered what kind of monster she was becoming. That part of her wanted him to come back. Kemi didn't sleep that night. She lay in the enormous bed in her room, still wearing the wedding dress because she couldn't figure out how to unzip it alone, and stared at the ceiling. Around 3 a.m., she finally managed to shimmy out of it, leaving it in a silk puddle on the floor. Morning came too soon. Kemi found Jun-ho in the kitchen, immaculately dressed in another expensive suit despite the early hour. He was drinking coffee and reading something on his tablet, looking like he'd slept perfectly well. "Can't sleep?" His voice was neutral, but his eyes lingered on her for a moment. She was wearing one of the silk pajama sets that had been left in her closet, and she felt suddenly exposed. "I'm hungry. Sue me." The corner of Jun-ho's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Almost. The kitchen is fully stocked. Take what you want." "How generous. Should I be grateful to my captor?" "You could try." He took another sip of coffee, watching her over the rim of his cup as she opened the refrigerator. Kemi found ingredients for ramyeon and started making it aggressively, slamming pots and bowls with more force than necessary. She could feel Jun-ho's eyes on her back. "Why me?" The question came out before she could stop it. You could have married anyone. Someone who actually wanted this. Jun-ho was quiet for so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "I don't want anyone. I need a wife for appearances. You needed your debt cleared. Mutually beneficial." "Beneficial for you, maybe. You're alive, your family is safe. That's more than most people get in my world." Kemi spun around to face him. What a fairy tale. Jun-ho's eyes met hers, and for a brief moment something like amusement flickered there. "You have bite. Interesting. Glad I can entertain you. You do more than that." The words were quiet, almost said to himself. Then he stood, setting down his coffee cup. "I have business today. My driver will take you to university. Your schedule remains unchanged. You'll continue your studies." "Really?" Kemi couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. "You signed a 3-year contract. I assumed you'd want to finish your degree." He straightened his already perfect tie. "Besides, it would look suspicious if my wife suddenly dropped out of school. We maintain appearances." Right, appearances. This was all just a transaction to him. "The car leaves in an hour. Be ready." Jun-ho moved toward the door, then paused. "And Kemi, don't try to run. You won't get far, and the consequences won't be pleasant." "Is that a threat?" He looked back at her, his expression unreadable. "It's a warning. There's a difference." The next 2 weeks fell into a strange, tense rhythm. Kemi went to classes during the day, always accompanied by a driver and at least one bodyguard who tried to look inconspicuous and failed miserably. Her classmates whispered. The rumors spread like wildfire. Kemi Adeyemi had married into the Park family. Some looked at her with envy, others with pity. A few stopped talking to her altogether. At night, she returned to the penthouse where Jun-ho was usually working in his office or out on business. He never explained. They orbited each other like distant planets, close enough to feel the gravitational pull but never quite touching. Except Jun-ho was always there in small, unsettling ways. Coffee appeared on the kitchen counter every morning, made exactly how she liked it. Lots of milk, 2 sugars. She never told him. He'd just noticed. When she studied late into the night at the dining table, she'd wake up in her bed with no memory of getting there, her notes organized neatly on her nightstand. Once she came home soaked from unexpected rain because she'd stupidly left her umbrella at school. Within an hour, 3 new umbrellas appeared in the entryway along with a raincoat in her size. It was confusing, maddening, because how could she hate someone who remembered she took 2 sugars in her coffee? How could she fear someone who carried her to bed when she fell asleep studying? But then she'd remember the cold way he'd trapped her into this marriage, and the anger would return. On the 15th night, Kemi was struggling through advanced corporate finance when she heard footsteps. Jun-ho emerged from his office, loosening his tie. It was past midnight. He looked exhausted in a way that made him somehow more human, less like the cold, perfect statue he usually resembled. "You're still awake?" It wasn't a question. "Finals next week." Kemi gestured at her laptop and the scattered papers around her. "This merger analysis is killing me." Junho moved closer, and Kemi tensed, but he just leaned over her shoulder, scanning her work. This close, she could smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her pulse quicken traitorously. "You're approaching it wrong," he said. "You're focusing on the short-term capital gains. Look at the long-term market positioning instead." "I know what I'm doing. Do you want to pass or do you want to argue?" His breath ghosted across her ear, and Kemi shivered. "Move over." Before she could protest, Junho pulled up a chair beside her. For the next hour, he walked her through the analysis, explaining complex financial strategies with the kind of expertise that came from actually executing them in the real world. His knowledge was impressive, intimidating, and helpful. Damn him. "How do you know all this?" Kemi asked, watching him sketch out a hostile takeover scenario with quick, confident strokes. "I didn't inherit my position. I earned it." Junho glanced at her, something almost like respect in his eyes. "You're smart. You could work for me after graduation if you wanted. I'd rather chew glass." There's that bite again. This time, he definitely smiled. Small, barely there, but real. It transformed his face, softening the harsh lines into something dangerously attractive. Kemi looked away quickly, focusing on her screen. "Why are you being nice?" The smile faded. Junho stood abruptly. "I'm not nice. Don't mistake pragmatism for kindness." "Then why help me?" "Because you're—" He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "You're important." "For appearances?" Junho's jaw tightened. "Get some sleep. You have an exam tomorrow." He left before she could press further, but Kemi sat there for a long time after, her heart racing, trying to understand what had just happened. The next morning, Kemi woke up feeling like death. Her throat was raw, her head pounding, her body alternating between burning hot and freezing cold. She'd pushed herself too hard, too many late nights studying, too much stress, too little sleep. She barely made it to the bathroom before her legs gave out. The world spun sickeningly. "Kemi?" Junho's voice cut through the fog. Then his face appeared above her, and for the first time since their wedding night, she saw genuine alarm in his eyes. "How long have you been like this?" "Fine," she mumbled, trying to stand. The floor tilted. Junho caught her before she fell, sweeping her up effortlessly. "You're burning up." He carried her back to bed, and Kemi was too weak to protest the way she was pressed against his chest, the way his arms held her carefully, like she was something precious rather than a debt payment. "Don't have to," she tried to say, but her voice wouldn't cooperate. "Quiet." Junho laid her down, pulling the covers up. His hand touched her forehead, and he swore softly in Korean, "You're delirious with fever." He pulled out his phone, making rapid calls. A private doctor arrived within 20 minutes. Kemi drifted in and out of consciousness, catching fragments. Exhaustion, stress, needs rest. And through it all, Junho's presence remained constant. When the doctor left, Junho stayed. He brought her water, made her drink it even when she protested, placed a cool cloth on her forehead. When she shivered despite the fever, he added another blanket. "Why are you being nice?" Kemi whispered, echoing her question from the night before. "Because I don't know how to stop." The words were so quiet, she thought she'd imagine them. Over the next 2 days, Junho barely left her side. He brought her medicine on schedule, made soup that he clearly didn't know how to make properly but tried anyway, and sat in the chair beside her bed, working on his laptop while she slept fitfully. Once, in a fever dream, Kemi mumbled, "You're not as terrible as you pretend to be." "Go to sleep, Kemi." "You carried me to bed all those times." "Thought I didn't." "No." But I knew. Silence. Then Junho's hand smoothed her hair back from her fevered forehead, gentle in a way she didn't know he was capable of. "Sleep. I'm not going anywhere." When Kemi finally recovered enough to think clearly, she found Junho asleep in the chair beside her bed. His usually perfect appearance was disheveled, tie gone, shirt wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. He'd been watching over her. Something shifted in her chest, something dangerous. "Junho," she said softly. He woke instantly, alert in the way dangerous men learn to be. You're awake. How do you feel? Better. You didn't have to do all this. Yes, I did. Why? Junho stood, putting distance between them like he always did when things got too real. You're important. You keep saying that. What does it mean? He turned back to her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. It means I care if you live or die. It means the thought of you suffering makes me want to destroy things. It means you're... He cut himself off, jaw clenching. Get some more rest. Junho, don't. His voice turned sharp. Don't look at me like that. Don't make this more than it is. What is it then? Complicated. He moved toward the door. Your exam was postponed. The university was persuaded to accommodate your illness. Of course, he'd taken care of that too. Thank you, Kemi said quietly, for taking care of me. Junho paused in the doorway, his back to her. Don't thank me. I'm the reason you were exhausted in the first place. This life, this stress, it's my fault. Before she could respond, he was gone. But something had changed between them. The ice was cracking. A week later, Kemi was fully recovered and back to her routine. Junho had returned to his usual cold distance, but Kemi caught him watching her sometimes with an expression she couldn't decipher. She was studying in the living room when a stunning woman walked through the front door like she owned the place. Designer clothes, perfect makeup, the kind of effortless beauty that made Kemi suddenly aware of her messy bun and old university sweatshirt. Oh, the woman said, her eyes traveling over Kemi with undisguised disdain. You must be the new wife. How charming. And you are? Jiwon, Junho's ex-wife. She smiled, all teeth and no warmth. Has he mentioned me? Kemi's stomach dropped. Ex-wife. Junho had been married before. He's in his office, Kemi managed, trying to keep her voice steady. I know where his office is, darling. I used to live here. Jiwon's smile sharpened. We should talk sometime. I could tell you all about your husband, the things he likes, the things he'll never tell you himself. She sauntered off toward Junho's private office, leaving Kemi sitting there with a nasty, unfamiliar feeling churning in her stomach. Jealousy, which was insane because she didn't even want this marriage. She shouldn't care that Junho had an ex-wife who looked like a supermodel and walked through their home like she still belonged here. But she did care, and that realization was almost as terrifying as the marriage itself. Minutes later, raised voices drifted from Junho's office. Kemi tried not to listen, but the penthouse had excellent acoustics. Can't just show up here whenever you want, Junho was saying, his voice tight with anger. Why not? Afraid your little wife will get jealous? Jiwon's laugh was cruel. Please, she's just another one of your father's arrangements. You don't actually care about her. Silence. Kemi held her breath. Get out, Jiwon. I left you once, Junho. I can come back just as easily. This girl, she's nothing. Just a debt payment. She'll never understand you the way I did. You're right. Junho's voice was cold. She's nothing like you. She's better. Now get the hell out of my home. Footsteps. Jiwon emerged from the office, her face flushed with anger. She walked past Kemi without a word. After the door slammed, Kemi sat frozen, Junho's words echoing in her mind. She's better. Junho appeared in the doorway of his office, looking uncharacteristically rattled. His eyes found Kemi immediately. How much did you hear? Enough. Kemi stood, trying to project a confidence she didn't feel. You were married before. It ended badly, that's all you need to know. She seems to think she can come back. She can't. Junho crossed to where Kemi stood, and suddenly the space between them felt charged with electricity. There's only one Mrs. Park now. You. For appearances, Kemi reminded him, but her voice wavered. Junho's hand came up, almost touching her face before he dropped it. Is that what you think this is? Isn't it? You said yourself. I say a lot of things. His eyes searched hers, intense and burning. Doesn't make them true. Then what is true? I don't know. The admission seemed to cost him. But I know that I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since you walked into my office. I know that seeing you sick terrified me. I know that Ji-won showing up here made me want to burn the world down because I thought you might believe her poison. Kemi's heart was racing. Junho, don't say my name like that unless you're ready for what comes next. What comes next? He leaned in close enough that she could feel his breath on her lips. I stopped pretending I don't want you. The air between them crackled. Kemi's pulse pounded in her ears. She should step back, should maintain distance, should remember that this man had trapped her, manipulated her, forced her into this marriage. But her body had different ideas. I hate you, she whispered, but it sounded like a lie even to her own ears. I know. Junho's thumb traced her lower lip, and Kemi's breath hitched. Doesn't make this any less real. Before either of them could close that final distance, Junho's phone buzzed insistently. He swore under his breath, stepping back and pulling out the device. His expression darkened as he read the screen. I have to go. Business. Of course. Kemi tried to ignore the crushing disappointment in her chest. Junho hesitated at the door, looking back at her. Lock your door tonight if you want me to stay away. Then he was gone, leaving Kemi standing there with her lips still tingling from almost being kissed and her heart racing with something that felt dangerously like hope. That night, Kemi didn't lock her door, but Junho didn't come. The incident with Ji-won shifted something fundamental. Over the next few weeks, the careful distance Junho had maintained began to crumble. He came home earlier, started eating dinner with her instead of locked in his office. They'd talk about her classes, about nothing important, and sometimes Kemi would catch him smiling at something she said. He left notes now, post-it stuck to the coffee maker or her textbooks. Your presentation is at 10. You'll do well. J. Stop studying at 3 a.m. Sleep matters. J. You're brilliant when you argue with professors. I listened to the recording from your seminar. Impressive. J. That last one made her call him. You're having me recorded now? I'm having you protected. Junho sounded amused rather than defensive. The recordings are a side effect. That's creepy. That's thorough. There's a difference. You're impossible. You keep saying that, yet you called me just to tell me. Interesting. Kemi hung up, but she was smiling. The notes continued. She started responding to them. Stop being weird. K. Stop pretending you don't like it. J. I really don't. K. Liar. J. It became their own private conversation. These little pieces of paper scattered around the penthouse. Kemi saved every single one, tucked away in her nightstand drawer like a secret. One morning, she found a note that made her breath catch. You're beautiful when you concentrate, also when you glare at me, especially then. J. She held the paper for a long moment, heart pounding before writing back. You're not as terrible as you pretend to be. K. His response appeared that evening. Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation to maintain. J. The tension between them built slowly, inevitably, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Every accidental touch felt electric. Every shared glance lasted too long. The air in the penthouse grew heavy with unspoken want. It finally broke on a Friday night. Kemi couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., she gave up and went to the kitchen for water. She found Junho there first, wearing only pajama pants, his torso bare as he stood at the window overlooking Seoul. She should have left, should have gone back to her room, but her feet carried her forward instead. Can't sleep either. Junho turned, and Kemi saw his eyes darken as they traveled over her silk pajamas. Something on your mind? I was just... She couldn't look away from the lean muscles of his chest, the dangerous grace in how he moved. Thirsty. Thirsty. His voice dropped lower, rougher. Is that what we're calling it? What else would we call it? Junho crossed to her slowly, deliberately, giving her every chance to run. The truth. Which is that we've been circling each other for weeks, that you haven't locked your door since the night I told you to, that I can barely concentrate in meetings because I'm thinking about you. He stopped directly in front of her, close enough to touch, but not touching. That I'm losing my mind wanting something I have no right to want. Kemi's pulse thundered in her ears. You said when we kiss, you want me to choose it. Yes. What if I choose it now? Junho went very still. Kemi, you don't have to. I want to. The words came out steadier than she felt. I'm terrified, but I'm sure. Something in Junho's control finally snapped. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. Tell me if you want me to stop. I won't. The kiss started soft, tentative, almost questioning. But when Kemi melted into him, when her hands slid up his bare chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart, Junho made a sound low in his throat and deepened the kiss. It was nothing like the perfunctory kiss at their wedding. This was fire and hunger and months of denied want pouring out all at once. Junho's hand slid into her hair, tilting her head to taste her better, and Kemi felt herself drowning in sensation. Say it again, Junho murmured against her lips between kisses. What? That you want this, that you choose this. I want this, Kemi breathed. I want you. I choose. Junho kissed her harder, walking her backward until she hit the wall. His body pressed against hers, and Kemi could feel every inch of him, the barely leashed hunger in how he held her. You're precious, he whispered against her throat, his lips trailing fire down her neck. Do you understand that? I'm yours, Kemi said, the words escaping before she could stop them. There's a difference. Junho pulled back to look at her, his eyes blazing. Say that again. I'm yours. Something shifted in his expression, possessive and tender and desperate all at once. He lifted her, and Kemi wrapped her legs around his waist as he carried her toward his bedroom. We stop whenever you want, Junho said, laying her on his bed with careful reverence. Say the word and this ends. I mean it, Kemi. I don't want to stop. I've never... Junho paused, seeming to struggle with words. I've never done this with someone who's never... I know. Kemi reached up to touch his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. I trust you. You shouldn't. But I do. Junho closed his eyes briefly, as if in pain. When he opened them again, the raw emotion there took Kemi's breath away. I'll be careful with you. I promise. What followed was slow, tender, nothing like the cold transactional encounter Kemi had feared on their wedding night. Junho touched her like she was something precious, kissed her like he was memorizing the taste of her, whispered words in Korean she didn't understand but felt in her bones. When it hurt, he stopped, held her, murmured reassurances until she urged him on. And after, when they lay tangled together with the Seoul skyline glittering beyond the windows, Junho held her close and said 3 words that changed everything. I love you. Kemi's breath caught. What? I love you. Junho's voice was rough, vulnerable in a way she'd never heard. I didn't want to. I fought it. But I love you, Kemi. Completely. Terrifyingly. I love you. Tears pricked Kemi's eyes. Even though you trapped me? Especially because of how you responded to being trapped. You could have broken. Instead, you challenged me at every turn, made me want to be better, made me feel human again. His arms tightened around her. You set me free. I love you too, Kemi whispered, and felt him shudder against her. I don't know when it happened, but I do. I love you. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and for the first time since signing that contract, Kemi felt something like peace. For 3 weeks they existed in a bubble of happiness. Junho became openly affectionate, touching her whenever she was near, kissing her before he left for work, pulling her into his lap when she studied. The cold, distant man who'd forced her into marriage seemed like a different person entirely. Kemi graduated top of her class. Junho was there in the audience, and the pride in his eyes when she crossed the stage made her chest tight with emotion. My brilliant wife, he said afterward, pulling her into a kiss that made her classmates whistle and cheer. But happiness in Junho's world was always temporary. The call came on a Tuesday evening. Junho's expression went from relaxed to deadly in seconds as he listened to whoever was on the other end. When? His voice was ice. How much does he know? Kemi watched as the warmth drained from his face, replaced by the cold mask she hadn't seen in weeks. I'll handle it. He hung up and looked at Kemi with something like dread in his eyes. What's wrong? We need to talk about how we got here, about what really happened with your father's debt. Kemi's stomach dropped. What do you mean? Junho poured himself a drink, whiskey neat, and downed it in one swallow. My father. He orchestrated this entire thing. I don't understand. Your father didn't randomly borrow from us. My father targeted him. Deliberately. Junho couldn't meet her eyes. After he learned you'd caught my attention. The world tilted. What? I saw you once before that day in my office, at a university event, 6 months ago. I asked about you, and my father... Junho's hands clenched into fists. He wanted me married. He didn't care to whom. So he found your father, offered an easy loan, then called it in early knowing you'd come to negotiate. The contract was always meant to trap you. Kemi felt like she couldn't breathe. You knew your father did this. Not at first. I suspected about 3 months into our marriage, but I didn't have proof until recently, and... 3 months? Kemi's voice rose. We've been together, we've been intimate, and you knew. I was trying to protect you. If I confronted him, he'd retaliate, so you lied to me instead. Tears streamed down her face now. You let me believe I was falling in love by choice when this entire thing was orchestrated. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Junho? Explain to me how this is anything other than another manipulation. Because I love you. His voice cracked. Yes, my father set the trap. Yes, I should have told you sooner. But what happened between us? That was real. That was us. How can I know that? Kemi wrapped her arms around herself. How can I know any of this was real when everything was built on lies? Because I'm choosing you over everything. My family, my position, my father. I need space. The words came out broken. I need to think. Don't leave. Junho reached for her and she stepped back. The hurt that flashed across his face almost broke her. Please, Kemi, don't leave. I have to. I can't be here right now. Kemi packed a bag through her tears and left that night. Not back to her university dorm. She'd graduated. She booked a flight to Lagos with money she'd saved from the allowance Junho insisted she take. She needed to be with her family, needed an ocean between her and the man who'd broken her heart. Junho didn't stop her. His last words as she walked out the door, I'll be waiting when you're ready to come home. This was never home, she'd said, and watched something die in his eyes. Lagos welcomed her with humid heat and familiar chaos. Her father's small house felt cramped after the penthouse, but it was real, honest. Her brothers tackled her with hugs, and her mother held her while she cried. Tell me everything, her mother said. So Kemi did. The contract, the forced marriage, falling in love despite herself, the betrayal, all of it. Her mother was quiet for a long time. Then, do you love him? Yes, and I hate that I do. Why hate it? Love is a gift, even when it's complicated. He trapped me, Mama. And then he set you free. You're here in Lagos. He let you go. That's not a trap, Kemi. That's love. The words haunted her through sleepless nights. She'd check her phone obsessively, finding emails from Junho. He didn't beg, didn't make excuses, just wrote. I was wrong to keep it from you. I was a coward, afraid of losing you. In trying to keep you, I lost you anyway. I'm not asking you to come back. I'm asking you to know that loving you is the only real thing I've ever done. Everything else is ash without you. J. Each email chipped away at her anger until only the love remained. The messy, complicated, terrifying love. On her 4th week in Lagos, her mother's phone rang. Unknown number. Her mother answered, went pale, and handed Kemi the phone. Someone wants to talk to you. Kemi's heart stopped when she heard the voice. Cold. Calculating. Park Tae-wan. Miss Adeyemi, enjoying your vacation. What do you want? My son has become problematic, dismantling my operations, cutting profitable deals, all because of you. His voice was pure ice. You're the problem, and problems get eliminated. The line went dead. Kemi's hands shook. Mama, take the boys, go to Aunt Funmi's house now. Kemi, what? Now. Her mother must have heard the terror in her voice because she gathered Kemi's brothers without argument. Minutes after they left, men appeared at the house. 3 of them with dead eyes and weapons. Kemi ran through the back door into the narrow Lagos streets she'd known as a child, but they were faster, cornering her in an alley with nowhere left to go. Nothing personal, one said, raising his gun. Just business. A shot rang out, but Kemi didn't fall. The man with the gun did, a red bloom spreading across his chest. More shots. The other 2 men dropped like puppets with cut strings, and then Jun-ho was there, emerging from the shadows like an avenging angel covered in blood that wasn't his own. His team moved efficiently around him, securing the area, but Jun-ho only had eyes for Kemi. Are you hurt? His hands ran over her frantically, checking for injuries. Did they touch you? You came, Kemi whispered in shock. I'll always come. Even if you hate me, even if you never want to see me again, I'll always come. His voice broke on the last word, and then she was in his arms, both of them shaking. I don't hate you. I tried. I couldn't. Jun-ho pulled back to look at her, his hands cupping her face. I'm so sorry. For everything. For the contract, for the secrets, for all of it. I know. I forgive you. Kemi touched his face, feeling the stubble, the tension. Your father trapped us both, but what we became, that was real. That was us. Come home, please. Jun-ho's eyes were desperate, vulnerable in a way that made her heart ache. I know I don't deserve... Kemi kissed him, tasting salt, his tears or hers. She couldn't tell. Take me home. Back in Seoul, Jun-ho confronted his father with Kemi by his side. The old man sat behind his desk, unrepentant. She was making you weak. Jun-ho pulled out a gun, placed it on the desk between them. She makes me human. You made me a monster. Choose which version you want to deal with. You'd threaten your own father? You tried to kill my wife. We're even. Jun-ho's voice was deadly calm. You're done. Retired. Effective immediately. Leave Seoul. Tonight. Come back. Try to touch her. Try anything, and I won't miss next time. Park Tae-won looked at his son, then at Kemi, and must have seen that Jun-ho meant every word. He left without another word. 6 months later, they stood at an altar again, but this time Kemi's entire family was there. This time, the ceremony was in both English and Korean, so everyone understood. This time, it was a choice. Before we continue, Jun-ho said, interrupting the officiant, I need to say something. He turned to Kemi, taking her hands. The first time, you didn't have a choice. This time, you do. If you want to walk away right now, I'll let you. I'll sign whatever papers you want. Your family will be taken care of. You'll be free. Are you trying to get rid of me? Park Jun-ho? Never. But I need you to choose this. Choose me. I choose you. Every time, I choose you. They kissed before the officiant finished, to laughter and applause. Real this time. Right this time. 1 year later, Kemi stood in their kitchen attempting breakfast. Jun-ho wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, kissing her neck. You're still terrible at cooking. And you're still terrible at giving compliments. I have other talents. His hands splayed possessively over her stomach, and Kemi covered them with her own, a secret smile playing on her lips. Yes, you've made that very clear. Regret marrying me yet? Ask me again in 50 years. I will, every day for the rest of our lives. Kemi turned in his arms, her hand unconsciously moving to her stomach, where a tiny life was just beginning, a secret she'd discovered yesterday and hadn't told him yet. I love you, she said simply. I love you. Jun-ho's eyes softened. Even the parts I don't deserve. Especially those parts. Outside, Seoul glittered in the morning sun. Inside, they stood wrapped around each other, proof that sometimes the most beautiful things grew from the darkest soil. That love could bloom even in chains, that choosing each other over and over again was the only freedom that mattered. Kemi had signed a contract that trapped her, but in the end, it had set them both free. So what did you think? Would you forgive Junho after everything he put Kemi through? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you love this dark romance journey, smash that like button, subscribe for more stories that'll keep you up at night, and share this with someone who loves a good enemies to lovers tale. What should I write next? Let me know below.